So we're here today. We're starting with the first session in a series which is going to be talking to real business owners in sunny Dorset, where we live. We're starting this week with Mark Cribb, who's come from the Urban Guild. And Mark, thank you so much for coming down.
Thanks for having me. That's a pleasure.
We're going to be talking about all the different pains and pressures and successes that young business owners go through. And we thought we'd start with Mark, who your business is pretty well known in the area. The Urban Beach and Urban Reef specifically, I suppose, are very well known, being landmarks on the coast.
Yeah, I think so. I guess location-wise, I suppose, it's probably a big one, certainly for Urban Reef, because we're right down on the seafront, so that probably tends to be the highest profile one that people see quite a lot. And then it's 12 years, and I'm a local boy. I've lived in, I'm from Bournemouth, lived in Bournemouth, educated in Bournemouth, although I went away for about 10 years. But yeah, I've been kicking around for a while and get fairly involved in all sorts of stuff in the community. So I'm very lucky. A lot of people know us and have been very supportive, which is brilliant.
Yeah, so how did you get started? Your first one was Urban Beach, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, the hotel. Yeah.
So how do you just sort of like go, I'm going to buy a hotel?
Yeah, I think everyone presumes you must have just won the lottery or something to buy a building like that. I think I always knew I wanted to be self-employed.
Right.
I travelled for a couple of years, so I backpacked around Asia and Australia and all sorts of places, and fell in love with hospitality and people, but really when I was travelling, I stayed in a lot of youth hostels, and I was always amazed at the customer service that you get in youth hostels. They were quite informal, but really, really good service, and it felt like they were almost like your tourist information centre, as well as your hotel, as well as your friends. And I'm from a tourist town. I was brought up as a kid in Bournemouth. My parents actually had a little B&B when I was a kid, and I thought, why don't we have that? Why don't we have that kind of the fun of the Aussie backpacker, basically? In Bournemouth, in my hometown. And I tried to set up a backpackers back in, probably 8 or 9 years before I did Urban Beach. Right. But that was even more of a stupid idea, because I was like 20, and how do you raise the money to buy a building and set up a hostel? But I went up to London, I ran health clubs and leisure centres, the golf course, did all sorts of stuff for about a decade, and then went, right, I'm back to Bournemouth, want to be self-employed. I looked at coffee shops and all sorts of stuff, and then I found this rundown old B&B in the back end of Boscombe. Boscombe had a super iffy reputation in the town, so it was massively cheaper than trying to buy anything in the town centre. Yeah. But still, I needed 500 grand, £510,000 to buy, in essence, this rundown old B&B. And what year is this? So this is in 2007. Yeah, so it'll be 11 years in a couple of months' time. Right. Okay. So a few challenges there. I wrote a business plan. Went round the banks and said, I need, basically, nigh on 500 grand, and all the banks just laughed at me. I couldn't even get in the door. My parents had made the mistake of paying off their house not long before that, so they were mortgage free, and I knew that. And I actually had a really good CV. I'd worked up in London, as I say, for a decade, and every business that I'd worked in, I sort of saw it as practicing with other people's money. So I was learning as much as I could about managing people, managing accounts, profit and loss accounts, all that kind of stuff. And everywhere I'd worked had double-digit growth over a period of time. So I had a good CV. So it was really a business relationship. I went to my folks and I said, look, I found this hotel. I reckon, I've got a good CV. I reckon whatever I do, I can make it work. I don't need any money. I don't want to borrow any money. I want to borrow your house, the equity in your house. And we had a legal contract drawn up. It's a great motivator, because if your business goes wrong and your parents will lose their home, that's pretty challenging. So I said,
because they say the bank of mum and dad is the biggest bank in the country now.
Absolutely.
So
and I was really uncomfortable with asking, just so can I borrow 150k or whatever. But there's something about saying, I knew it was 150 grand mortgage that I wanted to raise on their property as a deposit towards this hotel. Yeah. And I knew that if I needed to, I could go back into my career. I was reasonably well paid managing health clubs and leisure centres. So I was like, look, I've got a few sales pitches here. One, I can go back to my job and I can pay the mortgage. Two, if I buy the hotel, I've got a backup plan. If it doesn't work as a hotel, I can do student lets. There's all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So it's relatively risk-free. And thirdly, I was like, I've got to convince the bank of this anyway. So they were really good. We had a legal agreement drawn up, so it was official, and whatever happened, I had to give them the money back. But back then, I could go to the banks in 2007, pre-financial crash. They didn't ask too many questions. So I'm like, right, I've got £150,000 deposit. Now I need 350k. Still at branch level, no chance. And then I found out about these brokers. So once you get above the computer says no mentality, you've got to pay 3 or 4k to a broker. But he bypassed all of the no people and got me in at a level where all of a sudden they would say yes. And I wrote a pretty conservative business plan, because if I told them what, with hindsight now, what we've achieved in the last 10 years, they would have laughed me out of the bank. But we said, look, little B&B in Boscombe, we're going to take it from 60 grand a year to a couple of $100 grand a year. I need 350k. Banks don't take risk, so from their perspective, well, they do take risk, but not with little players like me. They do that on an international scale. But they've got 30% equity, in essence, in the property. If it goes wrong, they just flog the property cheap. Yeah. So it's a long answer, but yeah, convinced my parents to allow me to use their house as equity and got 2 mortgages.
So what about the money to refurbish the place? I mean, how did you get the ball going, or did you just start and then slowly tart it up?
I think it was December 2006, so 2007 by the time we actually opened it as Urban Beach. Yeah. But yeah, we moved in just before Christmas, and we had paying guests already booked in. So at that point, it was mainly used by contractors out at the airport, so engineers, people like that who were in town, maybe builders. They were paying 20 to 25 quid a night per person, including dinner and breakfast. Including dinner and breakfast. So the first day I was in there, I was in cooking, pork chops and potatoes. It was, it was basic as the actual place. I would sound rude, but I wouldn't particularly want to stay there. You'd stay there if you had to, and if you were on work. This is the way I spent the first 2 years running that place, just apologising to people, going, I know it's a little bit rubbish, but this is where we're going to get it. So yeah, straight into it. And then, it was almost Christmas, and then it transpires, between Christmas and New Year, we had a lot of people in their 70s, 80s, 90s who would treat the place a little bit like a nursing home and come down and stay between Christmas and New Year. Right. And it was a hazy kind of, you could smoke in buildings at the time. So behind the bar, we only had sherry glasses, massive TV, a sort of smoky haze, and lots of very old people waiting for Santa to come. And I would literally walk around the lounge clapping to make sure that nobody had passed away since I'd gone out of the room. It was a million miles away from what I was trying to do. My friends and family were coming around going, what on earth are you doing? Firstly, it's in Boscombe. Secondly, it's like pink, flowery wallpaper everywhere. And thirdly, half of your customers look like they're about to die. But
that seems to be such an odd, such a common thing when somebody starts a new idea. There's lots of people I've come across over the years who have actually said the same thing. They've come up with this idea, and everyone else around them is going, "What are you doing?" And these are the people that end up being successful. Yeah. And so,
yeah, I think if you're an entrepreneur, and I didn't used to use that word a lot. It's now put socially acceptable to use an entrepreneur. And as far as I could tell, 10, 12 years ago, if you went into a room and said, "I'm an entrepreneur," most people would go, "No, you're an arsehole," just for that introduction. But now, being an entrepreneur is cool, so you're allowed to use that term.
I think somebody like you can. But the problem, I see, and I think you are. I really do. The problem is when I read LinkedIn profiles and somebody has started a business a month ago and they're saying they're an entrepreneur, and I find that a little bit like somebody coming up and telling me they're a hero. I'm just kind of like, I think when you've got the medals.
If I go to meetings and have to introduce myself, I mainly say, I sell sandwiches and coffee. I don't stand up and go, "Hi,
I'm a philanthropist."
Yeah, hero, some people do. And it's when they use the word serial. I'm a serial entrepreneur. But I think that entrepreneurial thing is, it's about vision. So it's about being able to see stuff that other people can't see. And I think that's, whether that's a gift, I don't know where it comes from, but I can walk into a space, open warehouse or a room or whatever, and I can see it in its future. And I think we're very lucky, just as human beings, to be able to do that. We can visualise the future. So you get asked quite a lot now to go into a space and say, would it work as a restaurant or hospitality venue or whatever? And it was the same in the hotel. I could walk in there and I could walk around it, and I didn't see what was there and then, but I could see, the future layout, and literally, you can hear the music, you can see where the people are sat, the style of food that's coming out of the restaurant. And it's probably the reason that every venue that we've done has been different. We haven't come up with a concept and rolled it out. Every concept we've come up with has been specific to that location. And I love that. I love
Jenkins & Sons is extraordinarily different to Urban Beach.
Yeah.
Or Urban Reef.
Yeah, and we stopped using the word urban for that as well, realising I wasn't a really cool black rapper. Right. I thought, I'm going to have to get rid of that word. It's becoming, Urban Beach.
So it's not Urban Jenkins & Sons?
No, it was Urban Guild, funnily enough, because of the artisan link with Guild. But Urban Beach, when I was, I imported Italian garden furniture for a little while in a past life, and I was up at the NEC in this garden show, and there was this auditorium in the middle, and it had just lots of random words around each other. This is probably 18 years ago, and in my little Nokia at the time, there were just 2 words with lots and lots of other words that happened to be next to each other, and it was the words Urban Beach. And I looked at it and went, I quite like that contradiction between urban, which was, I think at the time I was living in London, and it was my urban kind of decadent life, but I'm a Bournemouth boy who fundamentally wants to be walking around in flip-flops and shorts.
In your backpacking days.
Yeah, and the beach, and I thought, I popped it in my phone, and I didn't know if it would be a coffee shop or anything, but I just thought, and this is before, now Urban Beach beach is a thing. So you can go to Paris or you know, places in Canada and actually build, or even London now, they build urban beaches in the summer where there aren't beaches. But back then it wasn't really two words you saw together. So the first one, calling it Urban Beach, was easy. The hotel, I was like, it's my London life meets my Bournemouth life. It's not just a name, it's a kind of, you know, it's a state of mind. It's about having the quality of urban and the relaxedness of the beach. Urban Reef was pretty easy because it was like, you know, they built an artificial surf reef in a town, so it's called Urban Reef. But then after that, we started to deliberately try and think of names. So we did Urban Renaissance, which was a cafe and an arts place, and Renaissance was arty and it was about rejuvenation. And then after that, I thought, you know what, we need to lose this. So Jenkins and Sons.